You're about to hear a conversation that couldn't be more timely. Today, I sat down with Sergeant Aaron Grissom from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Aaron's a patrol sergeant, SWAT team leader, traffic team supervisor, and one of the most respected DUI enforcement officers in the entire state. One lieutenant even described him to me as the most competent cop he's ever met. In this episode, we talk about the importance of traffic safety as it relates to impaired, distracted, and aggressive driving. We also chat about how rampant it is, not only in our county, but throughout the entire state. And here's the crazy part. While we were wrapping up this podcast, Aaron got paged out to a major crash involving two juvenile street racers who slammed into another vehicle, seriously injuring two elderly people inside. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't just statistics. This is happening in real time. So whether you're a parent, a young driver, or somebody who just shares the road every day, this conversation matters. This is the Hometown Hustle podcast with Sergeant Aaron Grissom. I guess first off, I just want to say thank you for being here. At the time that we're recording, I'm not officially done at the sheriff's office. Like, it's in progress, obviously. I still have a little ways to go. But by the time this gets released, I will be done. And so talked a little bit about this already, but my podcast in the past has been mainly focused around cool people in the community who are doing cool things. And as I've gotten to know you over the last 3 years, I know what kind of stuff that you do. You are obviously, for those who are learning of you now, you are a sergeant with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Not only I'm going to try to give you a little bit of your flowers here, so bear with me here. Not only do you run a patrol team at the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, but you also run our traffic team, which we'll talk a lot about today, which will be the primary focus of this. You're SWAT team leader. You're also a DRE coordinator, regional coordinator and correct me if I'm saying these things wrong, but a DRE is a drug recognition expert. And as far as that goes, you are like Master Jedi of DREs. Like you're like the Yoda of DREs. Like, you teach DREs how to be DREs and you teach DREs how to teach DREs. So you are the Master Yoda. So
that's very kind.
That's very kind. But not only that, the purpose of today's podcast and the reason why I wanted to have you on specifically is because in my time in law enforcement and as a member of the traffic team at the sheriff's office, I've seen the impact that driving impaired specifically and just poor driving in general has on our community. And you specifically are leading the way in that charge, in at least in Jackson County. And I'd say just as a regional coordinator for the DRE program, you do a lot with the state. Right. And I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm not even mentioning that maybe you can, talk about soon. But essentially, the point of the podcast is I want to give you your flowers and just say thank you for all the work that you've done over the years to kind of help our county, continue to be safe and all those sorts of things. But also, I want to get the word out about driving impaired, DUIs in general, what kind of impact they have on our community, what people need to be doing better. I mean, I'm not naive to the fact that I just don't think that this podcast obviously is not going to get to everybody in the world, and nor, even if it did, it's not going to prevent people from driving impaired.
Right.
But at least we can talk about some of those things and maybe open up some people's eyes, and hopefully they make some better choices and it ends up saving lives and prevents crashes and all those sorts of things, which is the goal of the traffic team anyway, right?
Correct.
So
yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying. In the past 3 years that I've been able to get to know you and work with you, I've been astonished. You're an awesome man, and you've done a lot of amazing things at the sheriff's office. It's going to be a huge loss, but I'm excited for you and your family and for your return to real estate. You will be greatly missed, of course. But everything you're saying about the traffic team and what we're doing is spot on. We're trying to save lives and prevent people from being seriously injured and killed. And the unfortunate fact is so many people every year in our county are dying, and it's 100% unnecessary. It's avoidable, and it's not stopping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I'd like to put some a little bit of perspective on it. If you could just help me with this. You sent me some statistics yesterday. First, you mentioned fatal crashes.
Right.
How many fatal crashes did we have just in Jackson County alone last year?
Yeah, approximately 30. We'll usually average somewhere between 25 and 40 every year, year after year. And that's going to be drivers, passengers, pedestrians, bicyclists, anybody involved with a motor vehicle crash on a public roadway or a premise open to a public that wind up getting struck by a vehicle and killed.
Right.
So,
and does that also include Oregon State Police's crashes on the I-5 corridor and the major highways within
just
the
within
county?
Jackson County, correct.
Okay. That does include OSP
It
crashes.
does.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, we're talking about 30 fatalities here
Correct.
due to traffic crashes,
Yeah.
and one thing I didn't mention that you're responsible for is the serious traffic
Accident reconstruction team. Yeah, the STAR team. Correct. So our job is to go out to all the major serious injury and fatal crashes within Jackson County, excluding the OSP jurisdiction, which is the Oregon State Police. So they have major highways and the freeway. They're responsible. They have their own reconstruction team that would investigate those fatal crashes, whereas our STAR team, it's an interagency team comprised of individuals right now from the Medford Police Department, Jackson County Sheriff's Office, Ashland Police Department, and we're looking to get some members from some other municipal agencies as well. But we'll investigate any of these level of crashes anywhere within Jackson County, excluding state highways.
which OSP handles.
Correct.
And they have their own
Yes.
team that does that.
Yes.
Yeah. And then going back to the fatal crashes too, like, do you know how many of those specifically were from impaired drivers? Not that it makes any difference, because usually a lot of those crashes are speed related or they're distracted driving.
Yeah. Yeah, it's between a third and half.
A third and half
Yeah.
are
Somewhere between 1/3 to 1/2 of all of the fatal crashes or the serious injury crashes. So we're talking protracted disfigurement, serious injuries where that person will never be the same. A third to half of all of those crashes are caused by somebody that's suspected to be under the influence of some sort of an impairing substance.
right. Which, I mean, often, like, the most common thing that people assume is alcohol.
Right.
But as you and I know, there are 7 different drug categories. Alcohol, I would assume that people would think alcohol is the most common, but we were looking at stats, you and I, last night, and it seems that half of the DUIs that the Jackson County Sheriff's Office arrested last year were alcohol, and the other half was a controlled substance.
Yeah, that's correct.
Whether that's methamphetamine, a narcotic of some sort, cannabis,
Yep, or a combination.
a combination thereof, inhalants, whatever it is.
Right.
So there's half of those. We can probably thank McLennan for a lot of that, but the half of them are alcohol related, roughly half, and then the other half are controlled substances, which is, I think, probably I would assume is a little eye opening for some people. They probably think it's alcohol, but
it should be, because that is a newer trend that we've seen in the past just 2 or 3 years, especially in the state of Oregon, where the drug impaired driving versus alcohol impaired driving, it actually overtook in a lot of places alcohol impaired driving. So there are more people driving under the influence of drugs now than alcohol, which has historically never been the case.
right.
Alcohol was the common substance that was readily available, most often abused, societally acceptable. But over the past several years, especially in Oregon, we've had a lot of issues with the decriminalization of hardcore drug possession. And obviously, if it's not illegal to possess serious drugs like methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, cocaine, ecstasy, et cetera, we saw an influx of people moving from other states into Oregon to partake of these substances because there was no recourse. Whereas if you're living in another state, it might be still a felony crime, and you could go to jail and prison over possessing these substances.
Right. And I think that, like, obviously the stats, like you said, there's obviously more people driving under the influence of drugs currently, and I think the stats are probably misleading, in which I said that they're half alcohol and half controlled substance. And I'm not, like, talking trash on any of the people. I just think it's a learning curve. But a lot of us, a lot of law enforcement in general, are still learning about impaired driving and detecting. You know, those controlled substance indicators of impairment are different than alcohol. I think everybody knows what a drunk person looks like.
Right.
But maybe not everybody knows, what somebody looks like under the influence of a narcotic, for instance,
Right.
or, maybe some of these lesser drugs, and like an inhalant, for instance, is hard, very not detectable at all, in a short time later. depending on what you're doing. So I think there's some, obviously some learning to do with law enforcement, as there should be. I'm not like talking trash. It's just part of the process. Like if there's more people using drugs, we just need to get better at detecting those things. Me included, like, it's hard. I'm sure I've not intentionally, but let several, drug impaired drivers go just because I didn't know necessarily what I was looking at.
Right. We're May 2026 right now. I started my official full-time police career in July of 2012. And so I'm about 14 years full-time as a peace officer in the state of Oregon. My first 3 years were at the city of Central Point, and then I've been with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office since. And I recall back to my days as a Central Point police officer that I just did not have the training and experience to recognize these people that were impaired by drugs. I can think back and remember numerous times, one time in particular where I had stopped this woman. She was driving and gave me a sob story, and I knew something was off with her. We tried some field sobriety tests, and I didn't see these clues in the eyes that I was trained to look for, which I would have seen if she was under the influence of some drugs, including alcohol. But there are so many other things that somebody can be impaired by. In this case, likely methamphetamine and heroin. But I didn't know what I was looking for. I hadn't been trained up yet. As a basic police officer, there's a lot of advanced drug detection skills and knowledge that you've not yet learned or experienced. And that's an important part of it, is just having those reps where you're dealing with people in the community so you see what it looks like when somebody is high on meth, high on heroin, high on whatever substance. They're not safe to drive. They're not safe to really function. We see a lot of these domestic violence cases and thefts and stolen vehicles, and all of these crimes are being committed because somebody's not thinking correctly. They're impaired. Their reality is different than the reality that you and I live in, and it's directly because of these drugs affecting their mind, their body.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely not the case anymore for you.
No, it's not. No.
I want to share a fun story just because I had this DUI. I don't remember at the Shell station on West Main, and
I recall.
You recall?
I do.
And anyway, but I stopped this lady. She was driving like 15 miles an hour under the speed limit, which it's already like a 25 mile an hour zone. She was like just crawling on the road, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, there's something weird here happening.
Yep. And
anyway, she pulls into I light her up. She pulls into the gas station, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like, there's something funky going on here. Like, I don't remember what exactly indicators that I saw, but there's something funky going on. And I was like, that's what it was. It was like the low raspy speech that comes with narcotics.
Yes.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, I think there's some narcotics on board here. And I was noticing her pupils were kind of small because we were fully lit up in this like really well lit gas station. And I was like, I feel like her pupil's pretty small. And I'm like, something's going on. And anyway, she had a warrant anyway. So I get her out of the car, slap cuffs on her. I'm throw her in the back of my car, and I'm standing there talking to her, and you pull up to back me up. And I remember you just I saw you, you just walked by me and just glanced in the back seat as you walked up to the front of the car, and one of the Medford officers was there helping me, do the thing. And anyway, short little time later, I had my conversation with her, and I still was feeling like there was something there. And I come up to your car and I just say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm seeing. Low raspy speech, blah, blah, blah. And I'm telling you, and you're like, yeah. And she's pale and this and that. And she's like, yeah, she is absolutely under the influence. 1000%. And it's just and all you did was walk by and glance at her, know,
Right.
It's just, and so that's one of those things. I've seen you operate in a lot of different, DUI investigations now. And it's just fun to watch you do it just because it's different.
Sure.
It's super smooth. So
yeah, honestly, I've now done a few thousand DUI investigations, and so you get an eye for it. But by no means was that an overnight thing. So I just told you, as a 2.5, a 3-year officer, I didn't have those skills and abilities. Then I went to the advanced roadside impaired driving enforcement class, which is an intermediate level class that you deep dive into the 7 drug categories and how impairment by something other than alcohol might present. And it opened up a new world for me. I came to the sheriff's office, and we had a fatal crash where a pedestrian was run over and killed. And long story short, through that, the sheriff decided that we were going to dedicate a deputy to DUI enforcement, where that deputy, their sole job would be to identify, locate, arrest these impaired drivers to get them off our roads to prevent these fatal crashes from occurring within our community. And I moved into that role in 2016. So it's been 10 years ago. And obviously over the course of 10 years, I've been able to see a lot of things in the world of crashes and impaired driving. And it's been something that I am to where I am now at this level, to where oftentimes, you can walk by and just look at somebody and you'll pick up these observable, articulable signs of impairment that are present. They can't necessarily, they're not like voluntary things, right? They're totally involuntary signs that are present on the person. So if you see that they're pale and they're sweaty and you have goosebumps and their speech is slow and raspy and their pupils are constricted and they're on the nod and they're falling asleep, you're looking for these things all the time. So when you see them, you know exactly what's more likely than not occurring.
Yeah. I love it.
So good.
It is so good. I did my traffic phase with you, and I hadn't even gone to the academy, or I was in the academy, but we hadn't gone through the SFSTs or any of the stuff that you learn when you're at the academy. And I didn't have any perspective at that point. And I saw you do, a handful of DUI investigations during that time. And, I remember going to the academy and we had worked through it, and going through the SFST stuff. And I remember doing the things and one of the instructors up there, I went through my whole thing and he was like, okay, good. And did the thing. And I'm watching these other people in my class and I'm like, oh God, this is awful. I started getting some perspective, after watching you do it. And then I remember coming back and I was working team 2 or something. And there was a star crash. There was a motorcycle crash out there on the Gold Hill Bridge.
Right.
Remember the guy?
I do.
Yeah. Up the telephone pole. I remember there was another guy involved and I remember you coming over and just how you conducted your SFSTs and how you spoke to them. It's just, I don't know, it's different. And I've always looked at it and just been like, man, that's how I want to do my DUI investigation. So I've always tried to emulate what you're doing and how you do it. Cause I just like how you do it. It's awesome.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's
quite
a compliment.
Yeah. I've had several more times where I've seen you do certain things and just how you do them. And so I appreciate that. Going back to, I heard you say you've done a few thousand DUI investigations. Do you know off the top of your head maybe how many DUI arrests that you've made?
Oh, it's not as many as you might think. It's somewhere in the ballpark of 500 DUI arrests that I've physically have made, but I've been a part of, 120 drug influence evaluations as a DRE that I've conducted, but then I've been a part of so many other hundreds of investigations where I was a training officer, a backup officer.
Right.
I was just observing the process occur.
Right.
And a lot of people that I run through field sobriety tests, they exhibited some signs of impairment. I had probable cause to believe that they were impaired, but then we jumped through the hoops and I determined, well, actually, my probable cause is dissipated. I do think they're able to safely drive.
Yeah.
They may have had the one beer. I smell the beer. Their eyes are watery and bloodshot. They might have had the odor of alcohol in their breath. So I had a reason to ask them out on field sobriety tests. But I tell these folks it's not illegal to drink and drive, as odd as that might sound. It's illegal to be impaired and drive.
Right.
So if you drank a beer an hour ago, you should be about sober right now.
Yeah.
And even if you had a beer in you, it depends. It depends on what I see and the person and their tolerance and all those related factors. But that person isn't necessarily impaired to the level where they would be arrested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. Yeah. There's more that I want to get into, but I'm trying to lay the foundation for the kind of impact that you've had on our community. You said that you've been involved in few thousand DUI investigations,
right?
Directly involved, which is incredible. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office, you sent me the stats last night, had 504 DUI arrests last year.
Correct.
In 2025, which is amazing. So
It's amazing, and it was a huge increase over the prior 2 years. So that was the number for 2025. In 2023, it was close to 367. I believe that's the number.
Okay.
And then 2024 was just one less.
Okay.
So we're talking mid 360s. So the difference between 367 and 504 is tremendous.
It's massive, yeah.
It's like, over 30% increase over the course of 1 year. Not that there weren't that many impaired drivers in those prior years. It's just we are not a huge office of deputies, and we have calls for service. All the 911 calls, people need help in the community, crimes that are in progress that we're responding to. We just have a small group of individuals that are dedicated to DUI enforcement, but then you also have other deputies that are on the normal patrol function that are also looking for impaired drivers. They might come across them on a traffic stop, or it might be that they're responding to a crash and they notice the person's impaired, and then it turns into a DUI investigation.
Right. Yeah. And what I'm alluding to is like you were the first DUI, JCSO DUI traffic deputy. What I'm alluding to is that I feel like you've paved the way. Like we have a lot of like our admin staff, like obviously the sheriff cares a lot about DUI enforcement. Obviously, we have 3 lieutenants who are on the traffic team at one point, or who've dedicated a lot of time to the DUI enforcement stuff. And there's just, you can up and down the system, there is a huge influence put on impaired driving within the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Yeah. It's my personal opinion that I think that you lead the charge in that, and you're constantly encouraging our guys, not only just encouraging, but you just did an SFST refresher course for our agency, or at our agency for other agencies. There's other people there. You do those several times a year, you and the rest of the traffic team.
Yes.
And then you're also putting on the courses that you mentioned earlier, the Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving course, the ARIDE. And then also, obviously, you're also teaching DREs. You're teaching deputies and police officers alike to get better at detecting drug-impaired driving through the DRE stuff. And so you're teaching, not only is your impact here in Jackson County alone, in just the arrest that you've made or been directly involved in, but you're teaching other police officers how to keep our roads safe and how to take these impaired drivers who are making poor choices off the road. And I just think that the impact that you're having is not quantifiable. Like you can't put a number on it. But again, I'm trying to give you more flowers here that the impact that you're having on our community is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And
well, it's not about me, and I really appreciate that. And you're right on describing what we do. I'd like to say that you can't quantify the number of lives that we protect and save because we're stopping these crashes from ever occurring. You will never know, but you know that you are saving people's lives. 1 to 2 people a month will die at the hands of an impaired driver, and it's essentially a stranger. Typically, sometimes you might have an impaired driver that crashes and kills a passenger in their own vehicle, but a lot of times it's a crash with another vehicle or a crash into a motorcyclist, a bicyclist, a pedestrian. We've had a few of those just recently. And so what I see is that this is extremely important work that must be done, and that you can have a hand in preventing a person or 2 every month from being murdered. And that is crazy to think of, but that is exactly what's happening. And the only way to stop it is to go out there and to find these people before the crashes happened, because otherwise we would just make being impaired illegal. Like if you were going to be impaired and drive, we would say that's a crime. Well, it is a crime. Does it stop people? No.
Right.
Does education in and of itself stop people? No. Everybody knows that it's illegal to be drunk and to drive, or to be high and to drive. There's all kinds of public service announcements and educational campaigns, whether it be through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration or the Oregon Department of Transportation.
Or Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. Anybody that's gone through and gotten their driver's license or done a driver's education class, it's common knowledge, but people just disregard that. And they go and they do whatever it is that they're going to do. So we know that that's the case. So we need to have officers, deputies, and troopers out there looking for poor driving and then stopping those poor drivers that are egregiously speeding and failing to drive within their lane and not obeying the traffic control devices, blowing through stop signs. We need to stop them and make an assessment. Is this person distracted? Are they impaired? Do they need to just be educated? Do they need a citation to modify their behavior? Or is it, in fact, that they are completely unsafe to drive and they're putting everybody else on the road in jeopardy?
Yeah. It's awesome. It was my major attraction to the traffic team just because I know the kind of impact that it can have. Let's be honest, like you and I both know that a lot of the calls that a regular patrol deputy gets dispatched to are nonsense.
Right.
It's, a lot of times you're just
putting a Band-Aid on something.
Right.
It's a temporary fix, and you're just trying to get people to settle down, restore some peace to a moment of chaos, and it's good. It needs to be done.
Sure.
But it doesn't fix whatever problem is there most times.
Yeah. And obviously that's a complicated thing, right? It's not, police officers in general try to do everything that they can to make sure that people are safe and that people are, abiding by the laws and, all that sorts of stuff. But just like driving, a lot of people's behavior is inhibited by alcohol and drugs or, mental health issues and things like that. So it's a super complicated thing. And oftentimes, like a lot of these patrol guys, they're going to these calls that often feel like nonsense. Obviously, we go to some pretty important things and we, save lives and do all that kind of stuff. But it's the impaired driving and just the traffic team in general was super attractive to me in that fashion because I know that you can go out there and you can find these people and committing these crimes, and prevent these fatalities or homicides, murders from happening.
Right.
And yeah, you're never going to know what that is. But imagine, we say you had 30 fatal crashes this last year in Jackson County. Imagine if we didn't make 200 of those arrests, like how many more would there have been? You
could have had 40 or 45, 50. It's hard to know.
It is hard to know. And so it's super important work. With that being said, it's also super complicated work, which is another reason why it was attractive to me. But maybe I've had conversations with people about this, and I think a lot of people just don't understand that DUIs are the most highly litigated crime there is out there. And I think the obvious reason is that it's not just your everyday criminal that gets a DUI. There's doctors and lawyers and judges and other police officers and just regular everyday folks.
That's right.
That make these poor choices, that go out there and commit these crimes, and they have lives and reputations and businesses that they have to keep running. And so, of course, they're going to try and fight it. And because of that, there are so many different hoops that law enforcement has to jump through in order to get these, to make these, not only make these arrests, but also get these convictions, because there's a lot of hoops that the DAs have to jump through and the judges and all those sorts of things. Like there's a lot that goes into it. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, like how complicated it actually is. And that's probably why, you see some cops who are hesitant towards it, because it's hard work.
Absolutely. If you, as the officer, mess up just one step, you could lose the entire case off of a technicality. And it's a very real issue. It's a huge frustration. It's just the system, unfortunately. But what that requires is that officer to be really dialed in, to continually being up on the new protocols that are instituted, because it's always shifting. How you advise certain rights and consequences, how you ask certain things, how you even ask somebody to perform a field sobriety test has to be done in a very specific manner. And if you deviate from that, you could lose everything in that case.
Which is super frustrating.
It can be super frustrating because overall, it's about safety, it's about justice, it's about doing the right things for the right reasons, and the technicalities causing those cases to be dismissed is, I would say, not right. But there again, we have to be held to that highest standard and do things the right way. And so just knowing that is the case, that's why it's so important that we be dialed in and we be trained up and we operate at 100%.
Yeah. I don't like calling a game, but I've enjoyed playing that game, because I like all the little things that you have to do. It just makes it more challenging, and it's
chess.
Yeah, it's chess for sure. It's not checkers.
That's right.
Yeah, it is chess. And that is the interesting part about it. I think one of the things that's frustrated me over the last couple of years is people not being held accountable for their crimes. And I think with the DUI specifically, it's a little ass backwards, if you ask me. These folks, I can't speak for other agencies, but I know that the sheriff's office, just from having my own personal experience, like we try to do everything in our power to make sure that these folks are being held accountable in every manner. Like it was common practice to me, and I thank you and Vile for kind of passing this stuff down to me, that like common practice for me, depending on circumstances, to try and lodge in the jail for these DUIs and impound the vehicles that they're driving, because it's just one more added thing for them. Because what a lot of people don't realize too is that, and you would be able to speak to this better, because I, obviously still a very new cop when I quit. So, but you'd be better to explain this. But when people get arrested for DUI, if they can plea out and opt for diversion, and maybe they don't do any jail time at all. There's fines and there's classes and things that they have to go to, and their license will be suspended. However, that doesn't prevent people from driving, obviously, because we arrest people who are criminally suspended all the time.
Every day.
So I know that we've tried to do a good job at making sure that every box is checked, making sure that their license is getting suspended, and that we're submitting implied consent, or they're impounding their vehicle, so they have that additional fee and that additional trouble of getting their car back.
Sure.
Because of the the damages that we've seen, we know how important it is to try and keep these people from doing it again.
Yeah.
And the consequences have to be harsh enough for them to maybe have a reality check. Like, I don't want to do that again.
That's right. I'd like to start talking about implied consent at this point.
Sure.
And implied consent is an agreement with drivers and the state that basically says driving is a privilege. It's not a right. And that if a police officer has probable cause, which the definition is important, probable cause is the articulable belief that a crime has committed, and you have to have specific facts. So in this case, an officer has specific articulable facts that are the basis of probable cause that this person should not be driving. They're impaired. They're unsafe to be operating a vehicle on a roadway. So that person's arrested, and now through implied consent, it's legal terminology, they need to consent to a sample, a toxicological sample that will be analyzed for impairing substances. And in most cases, we're going to start off with a breath test. And a breath test is only going to test for alcohol. And then once we get past that breath test, depending on what the results are, we might ask the driver for urine, or we might be interested in a blood sample. Urine and blood can be tested for other things, drugs, for instance, whereas the breath test is only for alcohol. So that's one element. But if a driver who's under arrest decides that they're not going to cooperate and they're not going to consent, well, there's going to be an enhanced license suspension right out of the gate. It'll go into effect 30 days after arrest, but 30 days after arrest, that person would likely be suspended for a year. So they would not have a driver's license for a year.
Criminally suspended, not just violation suspended.
Right, which is a difference, because if somebody is violation suspended, that means they can be issued a ticket, a $445 ticket. They could be subjected to having their vehicle impounded, but they can't go to jail. Whereas if it's criminally suspended, you can and will be arrested and go to jail. It's a crime.
Right. So anyway, sorry, I interrupted the.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the suspension.
No, that's an important difference to note. So that's some of the implied consent stuff. So yes, there are initial consequences with the license suspension, which is good and important. And if somebody's arrested for DUI, there's a whole process that's going to come about. So they're going to have to be arraigned. They're going to be formally charged. They're going to be given some options. If somebody has never had a DUI and they're not involved in a crash that injures somebody, they're going to be eligible for diversion. And diversion is a program, it's an agreement with the court and the district attorney's office that basically, to simplify it, says, I will pay the fees and fines, I will take classes, I will go through alcohol and drug classes, and I'll do whatever those classes say that I need to do. I will get a ignition interlock device in my vehicle, which is Another term would be a blow and go. It's basically a breath test instrument that's installed in your car that, again, is only checking for alcohol, but it's to make sure that people aren't trying to drive a vehicle while they're drunk. So if that instrument detects alcohol, it's not that it'll turn off, but it'll note a failure that will get reported back to the Oregon State Police and have bearing on their diversion process. But essentially, people enter into this agreement because they don't want the criminal conviction. So if somebody completes diversion, it's going to take them a year, then they won't have a criminal conviction on their record for a DUI. So it's like a get-out-of-jail-free card, but it's still going to cost them money and time. And what we want is just voluntary compliance. Like, we get it. Like you said earlier, this sort of crime affects people in all levels of society, and that is spot on. Out of our office, we've arrested high-ranking military brass, politicians, actors, Olympians, business owners, and then you work your way down through middle-class society all the way to people that are drug addicts, no jobs, stealing vehicles, stealing anything that they can get their hands on just to trade it for drugs. But DUI is something that everybody can and does commit. And so it's a very interesting crime. It's not like a lot of these drug possession crimes where, you can and do come across people that are wealthier and of means that are possessing drugs, absolutely. But a lot of the people that you're coming into contact with aren't that. A lot of crimes may have a certain type of person that's more likely, as a generalization, to commit it. But DUI, everybody seems to commit that crime.
Yeah, all walks of life.
All walks of life.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and what I was getting at too, with like they can get this, what you said, to get out of jail free card, and that's fine. I'm fine. Like, compliance is more important. Like, we want people to not do this again. It also bothers me that they can get this get out of jail free card if they don't kill anybody. Yeah. So maybe we do a great job. Law enforcement does a great job at like finding these people before they crash, but yet they've had, obviously if they commit their second DUI, then there's not this option. But, we do a good job at finding these folks. We prevent this crash, and yet they get this get out of jail free card. But maybe we didn't find it, and they turn the corner and they go run over a family of four, or hit a motorcycle on the expressway and cause some major damages to some folks.
Absolutely, that is absolutely the truth of it, and what we see that happens. One of the frustrations that I have is they get a get out of jail free card on the first time that they're actually arrested. Well, how many times did that person drive impaired before and get away with it? Mm-hmm. So Jackson County is approximately 2,800 square miles. We have 900 miles of public roadway. There's not that many officers, deputies, and troopers out there. The fact that I ran across a person who happened to be right place, right time, that was completely impaired and had no business driving, there's a lot of people that I'm missing. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of times that person, statistically speaking, drove impaired when they weren't caught.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild to think about how many people are actually driving. Like, we had 500 arrests last year.
Right.
Like, think about how many people. Like, I've seen you get 2 DUIs in a matter of 5 minutes. You finished with one, and then literally less than 3 minutes later, you were pulling out of the parking lot, and you're getting another one.
Right.
Like, there's just those moments where you just like come across them.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously on the traffic team, we go out there and hunt them and find them. And right. our only job is to respond to crashes and look for impaired drivers.
Yeah. And then there's a large portion of that's done very intentionally with putting ourselves in the right places at the right times, and looking for those certain things. So, for instance, we're coming up on Memorial Day.
Right.
So Memorial Day weekend, absolutely people will be having good times with family and friends, doing the barbecue, doing the lakes, whatever. And that's great. But we know that a lot of those people will drink too much, and they won't make the correct decisions. Mm-hmm. They won't stay put. They won't have a sober ride. They will decide to get in their vehicle and drive impaired, putting everybody else at risk. So we will put ourselves in those locations knowing what's likely to happen, and we'll start stopping vehicles for violations and talking with those drivers with the goal of getting them off the road before they get going at high speeds and cause a crash.
Yeah. And it's another thing that you've done too that we hadn't talked about too is like the DUI enforcement nights where we like have like the words escaping
like a briefing.
Me. Yeah. Well, we'll have a briefing. We'll have like a get together where we talk about, like we did it for New Year's last year. We just did another one, like a less formal one, but for St. Patty's Day.
Right.
You know, we've done these things over the years, and the one New Year's that would we have 27 DUI arrests
the past
in
2
one night?
New Years we've had over 20 each one of those with just having a formalized group saturation event where we are going to go out and very intentionally and try to prevent this from occurring. And it's amazing because if I was to ask anybody in the community, do you think that driving impaired on New Year's Eve would be a problem? They would say absolutely. Everybody knows that there's going to be extra law enforcement out specifically looking for impaired drivers.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we were able to find that many, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It's insane. Yeah, it's insane. And it leads to all kinds of crazy stuff too. You know, you had an incident the other night that was put on social media in which you arrested a guy after, maybe they didn't put the reason why you were stopping him on social media, and maybe I won't even mention it. I'll let you talk about it if you want to, but you tried to stop a car for an egregious traffic violation, and he took off on you and ended up going the wrong way on I-5 and head-on collision with somebody, an innocent person on I-5, which could have killed him. Fortunately, it didn't.
Oh, yeah. I was so thankful for that. And as soon as he went the wrong way on the freeway, we immediately shut down the pursuit because it's too dangerous, right? He's putting other folks in the community in this extreme amount of risk. It was absolutely unnecessary. But yeah, it was a stop for some egregious speeding, and the driver didn't want to stop, and he eluded, and another police officer happened to be in the area and threw some spike strips to stop the vehicle, which is basically a controlled deflation of the tire to slow them down and get them to stop and surrender. But this individual was so impaired that he wasn't able to navigate the roadways in an acceptable manner. He saw signage that said wrong way, do not enter one way, and decided to take that highway off ramp, but take it as an on ramp and go head on into the traffic that had the right of way. So as soon as he got on that freeway, I stopped, and he was completely out of sight whenever the crash occurred. I couldn't see him anymore. He had just continued. Whereas a lot of times if you stop that pursuit when a vehicle goes wrong way on the freeway, they will figure it out because they see headlights coming at them. So they pull over to the side, and maybe they get out and run, or they turn around the correct way. Yeah. That's a normal thing. Yeah. But the fact that he disregarded all the very clearly marked signage and then decided that it was appropriate to drive into oncoming headlights, that's all a clue about how impaired he was, how his mental abilities were so far gone. He had no business being on the highway.
Several hundred yards in the wrong direction. It's really scary to think how many people are actually out there driving impaired.
I mean, we could go through 100 different case studies where people were doing everything right. They were minding their business, doing everything correct, and someone else crashed into them and hurt them or killed them. I tell my wife all the time, you're a fine driver, and I trust you. I don't trust the other people. You have to be so defensive, keep your head on a swivel, and watch out for other people that aren't paying attention. They're distracted or they're impaired. And it's terrifying. Should it rule over you and cause you fear? No, but you should be aware, and you should constantly be looking out and be cautious.
Yeah. I think the other day, I told you about this, but the other day I'm driving here in Grants Pass, and I can see in front of me a car with a woman driver, and she is, I'm a cop. Well, not for long, but I'll always be a cop in my mind.
That's right.
Once JCSO, always JCSO. But it's, I can clearly see that this person in the car is high on a stimulant, like clear as day to me. I'm not a DRE. It was my intention to become a DRE. I think I've done enough, had enough police interactions to know what somebody looks like when they're high on a stimulant, AKA methamphetamine. And I can see her. She's got the spirit fingers going on, super hyperactive body movements, exaggerated reflexes, all of those things. And I can see her just like totally just tweaking out in the car. And I told Shannon, like, I was like, look, I was like, do you see that? And she's like, oh yeah. I was like, that is impairment right there. Like that is, and then sure enough, we pulled up next to her because I wanted to see in the window, of course. And she's bruxism, all of the indicators. And I was just like, man, like this is awful. And it's like middle of the day. She's driving on a busy street. This was on 7th Street here in Grants Pass. And what's interesting about that is that one of the things that I've told people that I didn't realize until after I got involved in law enforcement is like Jackson County, the county as a whole, not only has us. I mean, you said we're a smaller agency, and yeah, we are compared to like, Medford and Portland and Eugene, or even the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, for instance. But we're bigger than most agencies in our area, far bigger than Josephine County, and far bigger than a lot of the municipalities in our area. But in Jackson County alone, not only do you have us, but you have Medford, which is a well-staffed and well-funded police department. And then you have Ashland, Talent, Phoenix, Central Point, Eagle Point, Rogue River, Butte Falls Police Department. I mean, there's a handful, right. and then Oregon State Police.
Correct.
And so you have all of these agencies with all of these different law enforcement officers that operate within our county. And then you go over here to Josephine County, where I live and work most of the time, and you have the Josephine County Sheriff's Office, Oregon State Police, and then Grants Pass Police Department.
That's it.
And that's it.
Right.
And Grants Pass Police, because they're, they don't go very far outside of the city limits, as they shouldn't, because it's, obviously they're funded by the taxpayers in the city of Grants Pass. And same thing with like Josephine County, you know what I mean? Like they have a responsibility to those citizens, and of course they're going to go and help Joe County if something pops off or whatever. But the lack of resources in Josephine County alone, or in some of these other counties outside of Josephine County and Jackson County, Klamath, for instance, like how big Klamath County is, and how few deputies that they have. Mm-hmm. It's scary to think how many people are out there driving and not getting stopped. Like I'd be curious to know how many DUI arrests Josephine County had last year. I bet you it's a staggering number, and I don't think it's because these guys don't want to. It's probably just because they're busy with other stuff.
That's right. A lot of these agencies do not have dedicated DUI cars. Right. So the patrol individuals are out there just handling their patrol calls, trying to write their reports that they need to write on these incidents, and they don't have the time to go and do that proactive work. So unless it's a crash that then they have to respond to, there's a lot of folks that aren't out making stops because they're so busy with other things. And like you're pointing out, this is, again, leading back to there's such a vast amount of roadway to patrol. There's so few officers. And when we come across these individuals, they need to be stopped. And how many times did those individuals drive impaired and will continue to drive impaired without police intervention?
Yeah. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to say.
You can't quantify it.
You can't quantify it. And I want to go back on there's this stigma or whatever that, police are brutal, or that they're too rough on individuals or whatever. And I'm not talking about physically, but you had mentioned like we're going to do everything we can to try and hold these people accountable, like towing their cars and all those things. And that goes for just all of the other things. Like I learned from you very quickly, and you learn very fast once you see the effects of what happens. Like the traffic team not only focuses on impaired drivers, but also aggressive and distracted drivers as well. So people who are on their cell phones, people who are aggressively speeding, and I shouldn't say aggressively, I should just say speeding, because oftentimes people are just going about their day, but they're doing 20, 25 miles an hour over the speed limit because they can.
Which there's a speed limit there for a reason. Mm-hmm. And that has a lot to do with reactionary time and being able to observe something that they need to brake for, avoid. And when they're driving, say 20 miles over the speed limit, they can't, for that roadway infrastructure, for those environmental conditions, perceive the issue, make a decision, and react in an appropriate amount of time. And it's they're not going to get to where they want to go that much safer or quick. It's absolutely not safer, but they're not going to get to where they want to go more quickly, like in reality.
How many times have you been on like I-5 and some person just goes like rips by you when you're in your personal vehicle, and then you pull up to the stoplight at the same time.
You catch up to them on the off ramp at the stoplight. Was it worth it? No.
Yeah, not worth it.
It wasn't. But it's so much more dangerous to survive a crash at 100 miles an hour versus a crash at 60 miles an hour. You aren't surviving that 100-mile-an-hour crash. And your reaction time is so minimized. People don't understand that when you're driving, say like 55 miles an hour, how many feet per second are you traveling? And I don't have the math in front of me, but if you glance away for 2 seconds to look at a text message, you've traveled hundreds of feet. Hundreds, yeah. And if that vehicle in front of you had to tap on their brake because they caught up to the car in front of them, or somebody makes a quick lane change, if you're traveling hundreds of feet and you're not paying attention, that's a huge safety issue. People don't understand how dangerous these vehicles are.
Yeah,
there's just not a level of respect.
No, and maybe that's where this kind of stuff comes into play and like help educating. But I think that like we had. I didn't go to this one, but and maybe you can fill in on some of the more details, but we had that fatal crash at the Central Point exit where that motorist drove over the guy that was walking in the crosswalk.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I remember about it is that he was making a right turn onto the on-ramp to get onto I-5. He was going home, following a family event, not impaired, but he was looking the other way, not looking in the crosswalk, looking the other way to see if a car was going, and didn't fully come to a complete stop at the stoplight and looked to see if there was a pedestrian or other vehicles in the roadway, and rolled through the turn and then ran over this pedestrian that was in the walkway. Correct. And like I think we've all been guilty at some point of rolling through a stop sign or rolling through a red light. But that's what I was saying about like I think you don't understand like the impact or like why these traffic laws are in place until you actually see what happens to these folks, right? Until you've gone to a lot of these crashes, and I haven't been to a lot of them, and I'm sure you've been to hundreds.
You've been to your fair share.
Enough to know.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you're hitting it on the head. A lot of people don't know. They haven't seen this side of it. I had no idea before my career in law enforcement. My family never called the police once that I can ever remember. Like, we weren't exposed to that. You might see a crash when you're driving by on a highway one day, but we weren't involved with crashes either. But the fact is they happen numerous times every day in all jurisdictions all across our state and the country. And it's something that people, they don't know what they don't know. The community doesn't understand how dangerous this is, how often it happens, how very real these incidents are, and they're life-changing. But you're spot on. This gentleman essentially wasn't doing anything wrong, except he didn't come to a complete stop, and he was just trying to get home. He's checking left to make sure there's no vehicles that are going to cut in front of him, and he makes the right turn and doesn't see the pedestrian that was doing everything right, that was walking in the crosswalk when they were allowed to. And it's horrible, but I've seen that same style of crash happen many times. Oftentimes, it's a bicyclist, and maybe the bicyclist needed to yield. So a little bit different circumstances, but it's the same thing. People are in a hurry. They're rolling through a red light. They're just trying to get on their way. Folks just need to slow down.
Yeah, and pay attention. You know, there's the one recently too, where the motorist pulled out in front of the motorcycle, and it was early in the morning, like dusk hours, but he misjudged, at least from what we understood, he misjudged how far away the motorcyclist was. And people just need to slow down and pay attention, because obviously it's not going to help you getting into wherever it is that you're turning into 30 seconds faster or 5 seconds faster.
You get there a few seconds quicker, but you hurt somebody, you jeopardize your family, you jeopardize somebody else, you have your vehicle destroyed. What kind of inconvenience is that? That's huge.
Yeah. And you ruin that person's life also.
That's right. It's not appropriate. It just doesn't make sense. So knowing that that's the case, slow down and be cautious. I want to go back to being a deterrent.
Okay.
and holding people accountable and taking people to jail. A lot of folks might not understand that. Statistically, just factually, we know that giving people warnings, say for speeding, if you pull somebody over for speeding and you give them a warning, it's very unlikely that that will have the desired result and modify their behavior. And if they speed again and don't get caught or get a warning, it further emboldens them and it has no deterring effect. What we see, statistically speaking, is that to modify people's behavior, you have an exponentially higher likelihood of doing that, of correcting their behavior, if you hold them accountable, if you give them the citation, and even better in the case of DUI, if you make that arrest, they go to jail, and their vehicle gets impounded. That's all lawful protocol. Sometimes police officers think that, oh, this is just a nice person, and I'm just going to give them a ticket and take them home. There's very little deterrence with that. And why are we enforcing the DUI statute in the first place? It's to save lives, and it's to increase the safety on our roadways. I can remember a case where a young adult was driving impaired. They were arrested, and that person wound up consenting to the breath test. They were legally drunk. They had no business driving. They were cited and released to a family member. That same individual goes to the house, takes a family member's vehicle, starts driving again, and gets in multiple hit-and-run crashes before I found him, arrested him again. We're talking an hour later after being released. And it was so frustrating because we had all of these other victims now whose vehicles were hit and damaged. That never would have happened had that individual just been lodged in jail to sober up. It's an adult timeout. You're going to sober up. You're going to be held accountable.
Yeah.
And we're going to move on.
Yeah. You sit in the corner and you shut up. Your adult timeout.
Well, people need that.
Yeah,
people need to be held accountable, and they need to be corrected when they're stepping out of line and doing crazy, dangerous things that are damaging other people's property and injuring other folks, or at least putting those other folks in jeopardy.
Yeah. Yeah, super scary. Super scary. In that same vein, we didn't talk about, you had mentioned speed limits and they're environmentally appropriate for what it is. And I think people should know this, and maybe they just don't think about it, but like you said, the speed limit signs are there for a reason. And it's not like that ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation, just makes this stuff up. Like, it's not just like, oh, we think that this is a good speed. You know, they do studies. They lay out, they do studies on the road. They lay out the cables on the road. They see how often people are traveling on those roads and what speeds they are. And one of the things that the traffic team does, not me specifically, or maybe not some of the deputies that are on the traffic team, probably more you and the lieutenant, are working with ODOT to help with these things. But you guys help them with studies. If you have a certain number of crashes in this particular area, you can encourage ODOT to do studies and
yeah, I just had a meeting maybe 3 weeks ago. It was a quarterly meeting with the ODOT, which is Oregon Department of Transportation, and county roads, and there were other entities from local government there, from other roads departments. And,
is this the traffic safety meeting that
correct,
and that's once a month?
This is quarterly. This meeting's quarterly, and we brought up some of these locations because the public are welcome at this meeting. So we had some individuals from the community that came in, and they were complaining about speeding drivers in their area and wanting the speed limits to be reduced. And in some cases that can be done. But like you said, there are best practices and protocol, as well as speed studies and environmental conditions present, such as the density of homes, how close the driveways are to each other. And all of these factors play into what those established speed limits are and should be. It's not just a administrative number that's tossed out there and they say, oh, we think this should be a 45 or this should be a 25. There's a lot of methodology behind establishing those speed limits.
Yeah. The stuff that the traffic team and the sheriff's office does, and law enforcement in general, it's just wild to think about. Like, there's just so much that's going on, and rightfully so. And, maybe people, I know they're obviously not aware, but hopefully we can kind of help and educate them. And that was kind of the point of today's conversation.
Well, I love it. I think it's wonderful. Our traffic team tries to get the word out to the community through enforcement, through education, and through environmental design, which is what we were just hitting on with speed limits and traffic safety forums and dealing with the public. And if there are issues with the environmental design of a section of road, whatever that might be, let's address it. Maybe we have trees and shrubbery that are growing over the fog line of the road and blocking signage, and people can't see there's an upcoming curve or a turn, or there's a reduced speed limit. Yeah, let's address that. Do we need to change speed limits? That's all important. But this podcast today, this platform allows us to just have another educational voice that hopefully we can get the message out to some folks that it is all about safety. Everything that we're doing and specifically the traffic team of the sheriff's office is to preserve life and to protect property and bring attention to the fact that these issues, specifically DUI and DUI crashes, are happening every day, all the time, and it's killing a lot of people within the community. Just one life lost is too much. And so for us to lose 1 or 2 lives a month from an impaired driver, that's unacceptable.
It is unacceptable. And I think that's like another, like the common hot topic in our country these days is like gun violence, right? And like, how many gun-related homicides did we have last year in Jackson County?
Yeah. If you truly look at those statistics, because it really all comes down, in my opinion, to propaganda and narratives. Because you have so many more, exponentially times more people that are injured by cars and killed in crashes than are ever touched by any kind of firearm violence. It's so minimal. If in our community you had 1 or 2 strangers a month being gunned down, there would be public outcry and legislative change, and it would be addressed.
Yeah.
But we have cars that are taking out people, and should we outlaw cars? Absolutely not. It's just a tool, but it's the people behind the wheel that are committing these crimes, and they need to be held accountable.
Yeah, it's wild. And yeah, it's the narrative, it's propaganda, and I don't know why it is what it is, but I hope we can get the word out and just continue to have these conversations and educate people on traffic safety. I mean, that was the entire point of bringing you here. Obviously, I wanted to give you your flowers and thank you for all the things that you've done.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and obviously, I know that you're going to continue to do it because it's a passion of yours. It's a passion of mine. Obviously, if anybody who pays attention to my journey by now, they'll know that I'm not working at the sheriff's office anymore. But it doesn't mean that I don't care. And it doesn't mean that I won't continue this fight in any way that I can. What would you say for people who, like the classes, see, there's old Vile right there.
Traffic team member right there.
Yeah, that's all, Deputy Vile. Stud. You have these the classes that you teach on the first Wednesdays, and I'm spacing on.
Yeah, it's the victim impact panel.
Impact, thank you. The VIP classes, the victim impact. Stupid. Spacing out. I've been away from law enforcement for 2 months now.
For good reason.
On baby leave. Yeah,
that's
on
an
baby
amazing
leave.
thing.
Yeah. Is the general public allowed to attend these classes?
Absolutely. So usually the Victim Impact Panel is held the first Wednesday of every month at the Smolin Center, which is a building that's detached from the Asante Rogue Regional Medical Center in Medford. It's off of Barnett. And essentially you have a class that begins at 6:30. So doors open at 6 o'clock. Class starts at 6:30. It runs until 9. There are people there that are required to go through the class as a part of their court-ordered diversion, but we always invite people from the community to come, whether it be just a family member or a friend of somebody that's required to take the class. We've opened up these classes in the past to high school students and reached out to schools and encouraged that they send their young drivers, the 16, 17, 18-year-old drivers that are in high school, because those teen drivers are at a disproportionately high level of danger as well, being out on the road. So driving fatalities and crashes, obviously, for teen drivers is always a leading cause of death for that age group. So We want people to come to these classes and be educated on the realities of driving, the dangers of driving, the DUI issues, and really just in hope that they'll be an advocate for this message, that they themselves won't drive impaired, that they will help others to not drive impaired, that they'd be a better friend that would prevent their friend from driving. And we want everybody in the community to just come alongside of us and to help with this message, because it's just going to contribute to a safer home for all of us.
Right. Talk about just briefly, real quick, like what you guys cover at these victim impact panels. Because one of the things that I was considering with this podcast too was getting some of the footage that you guys share of these DUI investigations after crashes, and maybe some of these photos in which people are, dismembered and highly injured and all that sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And by no means is the point of the class just to scare people into not driving by showing them grotesque pictures. We have case studies that are all real cases from Jackson County, but we start off with some ground rules and a message essentially that outlines this is a problem. It's a problem here within our community. It's a problem across the state of Oregon. It's a problem across the county, and that would be impaired driving. And so we go through some statistics and educate people on how likely they and their family and friends are, how likely they are to be involved in a crash like this, whether they simply be the victim or they be the offender, what those consequences and realities of being involved in a crash like that could mean. So for the offender, jail and license suspension and losing jobs and missing out on memories with families and friends and all of those issues. But then as a victim, how that could totally affect your reality and your world and change your life forever. We go through the different processes on the legal side of it through DMV. We do some legal definitions, and then we set this foundation so they understand the police and the district attorneys, which are the prosecutors of these cases. We take them through a foundation to educate them on those positions, and then we go into the case studies and we show how these cases have played out in our communities and how they've left families without loved ones, and how these offenders went to prison for X number of years. And again, it's all just to educate and to bring it to light that this is important. And oftentimes we'll have a guest speaker there, Steve Banry, who's a alcohol and drug addiction recovery specialist, and he'll come alongside people, and he always offers his phone number out, and anybody can call him, and he'll help people through this process, because addiction is addiction, and it doesn't matter if it's alcohol or drugs or other things, but there are tools and resources out there where we just want people to be healthy and happy members of our community, to where they can have a decent life and not hurt other people.
Yeah. Lastly, what would you say, what advice or what would you say to folks who are watching this and how to help us prevent fatal traffic crashes from happening, and prevent people from, driving poorly? I don't want to just single out impaired driving, because obviously that's like a big problem, but also like help us spread the word in terms of aggressive and distracted driving as well.
I honestly believe that if people just understood.
Something's going on.
Something's probably going on.
We're going to do a quick pause. All right, so we took a quick break because Sergeant Grissom literally just got a page for a STAR team crash for down in Medford right now. So again, just real quick, the message that you want to give to, before you have to go get to this, what's the message that you want to send to the people who are watching this to help us prevent these kinds of things from happening?
Yeah, traffic safety is a very real thing, and it's something that requires everybody who's going to be driving and on the road to make a very conscious decision to prioritize not only the safety of themselves, because some people unfortunately just don't care, but the safety of their loved ones and everybody else's family. Slow down, pay attention, don't drive impaired, and encourage others to do the same. It's not just fun and games. These are public roadways. The fact that you're on them is not a right. It's a privilege.
Right.
And you need to just be a decent human being and prioritize the safety of everybody else. Also, when you see people that are driving ridiculously, please call. Every police department has a non-emergency phone number. I can't tell you how many cases we've gotten a call from just somebody in the community that saw something that didn't seem right or safe. And then we were able to attempt to locate that vehicle. We were successful in finding them, and we intervene and remove somebody from the road that is so unsafe and has no business driving because they're under the influence or they're committing whatever other crimes. And so please be an advocate of this message to your family and friends and those that are in your sphere, but then also call a non-emergency number. It's the same 911 dispatcher that would take the 911 call. It's just a different phone line. You're not bothering us. Yes, we have a lot of important things to do, but this is important.
This is just as important.
You could save a life. Yeah. It's very important.
Absolutely. Sarge, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate this very much. And I look forward to obviously more conversations with you, and hopefully we can spread this message. But just thank you for being here. And obviously you got to get back to work.
Well, thank you so much for hosting me and helping us get this word out. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah. Love you, buddy.
I love you too.
All right. See you later.
All right.